Okay, let's get started then. Welcome everyone to the next exciting episode in a series of value in energy data seminars. We're joined today by Nazmia and Wei Young from the University, Cranfield University. I'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping and then without further ado, I will introduce you to today's speakers. So, if you could please put your questions in the chat as we go through, we'll hopefully have a bit of time for questions at the end of the talk. No cameras or microphones on, please, just so that we're not disturbed while our speakers are speaking. And also, we will be recording today's talk, and it will be available later on YouTube. Okay, so Nazmia, you can get your slides ready, and I will just tell you a little bit about our speakers today. So Professor Nazmia has a chair in sustainable energy transitions at Cranfield University. She's published more than 70 papers and has nearly 3,000 citations, 2 book chapters on social technical transition to net zero energy systems. She's an interdisciplinary energy economist with a background in urban and regional planning, and her research focuses on developing frameworks, tools, and models to characterize and manage the embedding of low carbon technologies in society by recognizing how they mutually influence and are influenced by the interdependencies across environment, economy, and energy systems. And she's joined today by Weizhu, who graduated with a PhD from the University of Southern California last year in economics, and joined Cranfield University in August last year as a research fellow developing economic models looking at energy transitions. So today they're going to talk to us about the findings from a recent project. It was a UK research and innovation project called Protecting Minority and Ethnic Communities Online. So their talk is Ethnicity and Access to Digital Energy Services. Welcome both.
Thank you so much, Ran, for this introduction. And hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to be able to tell you about our project. And as beyond myself and Weijo, this work also draws from the input from other researchers at Cranfield University, Menan and Senat. Menan in particular wasn't able to join us today because he's attending another event that I'll tell you about later. Without overdue, today, what I would like to cover really the why we are here, which is about this Prime project. So I'll tell you a bit about the overall Prime project, because I'm going to share, as you will see in my slides later on, I'm only going to present some of the findings. So Prime has done so much more beyond what I'm going to share with you today. So the first part is really about that, giving you that overview of the Prime project. Second, in the second part, I will be talking to you about our findings in terms of understanding and of minority ethnic communities' access to energy services in energy sector as viewed by sector experts. The third point that I would like to cover today is really around using the understanding how individuals engage with digital energy services and what factors improve or reduce their access satisfaction with the online services. And final point that I would like to touch upon is I'll go beyond energy, and then I will tell you a bit about what are the cross-sector issues or opportunities between energy, health, and housing sectors. So first point about Prime project. So as we mentioned before, Prime was a 3-year project. It was funded by EPSRC, and it brought together a large interdisciplinary team across social sciences, applied linguistics, cybersecurity, computer science, human-computer interaction, etc. So this was quite a big undertaking. And it was also a project in which, from day one, we work with third sector organizations. So we work with a number of community organizations such as Caribbean and African Health Network or East London Mosque, etc. It's because obviously when we think about minority ethnic communities, there is a spectrum in terms of how, to what degree they are embedded in the society. And so these communities acted as gatekeepers for us to engage and to understand the views of these communities. And the project, oh, sorry, pressed the wrong button. Project came to an end March this year, so it was a 3-year program, and it was also research. So I'm from Cranfield. The project was also led by Harriet Watt with other partners, including Glasgow Open University and York. So what Prime was about. Prime was really interested in understanding minority ethnic communities' access to digital services and their needs and privacy concerns across 3 sectors, which are health, housing, and energy. So it's about firstly understanding their needs. Second, understanding service provider perspectives in terms of what the risks are and how they can design, co-design the services for the needs of minority ethnic communities. Third one, recognizing that, okay, if we understand the needs, if we understand the service provider perspectives, how could we co-design and co-produce usable social and technological solutions? The fourth objective of the program was really around saying, okay, could we produce data sets, tools, and models, etc., so that privacy enhancement is embedded in the design of the digital tools and services going forward. And the fifth one was to say, okay, once we understand what is going on, the service provider and the tools that they could develop, what does it mean for policy and practices in terms of addressing, reducing harm going forward? So these were the 5 overall objectives, and the program was designed around 5 work packages. As I said, I'm not so when in order to understand the individual's experiences and concerns and etc. So that involved primary research where interviews with individuals, more detailed follow-up interviews, as well as an online survey. And then in terms of service provider perspectives, then this will involve workshops and one-to-one interviews, as well as assessment of wider data sets. So once we understand both user needs as well as the service provider perspectives, then we then utilize the data mining and deep learning and other machine learning methods to identify the discriminatory processes in these data sets. And 4 and 5, for packs 4 and 5, really focus on development of solutions. In particular, in 4, we tested through Living Lab by engaging policymakers, regulators, communities, and individual organizations to test different privacy enhancing technologies and solutions. And in 5, these were then these tools when are developed and presented. And I have the good news that they are all available on the project website. So on the right here, you see the policy briefs that we produced. And if you go to website, there are prototypes, guidelines, different tools that we've created, such as persona creator or data sharing, data set sharing guidelines, etc. So as I said, what I am going to present with you today is only a small part of it. There is much more outputs and tools that we have developed that are all publicly available on the project website. So what am I going to cover today then? We said to expect perspectives, right? Individuals and then the service provider perspectives. So we had interviews in both with the experts as well as the individuals, and which use thematic analysis to analyze those results. And then what I'm going to share with you is really assessment of the key issues emerging from the analysis of both individual and organizational perspectives. So that is output 1, or information that I will share with you 1. Second one is a key aspect of, obviously, digitization and access to digital services, at least in the UK, is around really adoption of smart meter. So because smart meters can allow households to become to make use of different dynamic tariffs in the future, right? Time of use tariffs, or even today, in terms of making use of lower electricity rate at night, etc. Smart meter is needed. So that's why we then looked into Ofgem ethnicity boost survey data to understand the determinants of smart meter adoption. So that is a result 2 that I'm going to share. And thirdly, the modeling of individual behaviors that we undertook that using the survey data that we undertake in the Prime project. And then finally, I'll touch upon about the cross-sector issues. Okay, so let me go into what we did, what we unpacked around sector perspective. So this really involved talking around 13 or 15 experts in the energy sector. The graph on the right shows what type of actors we have spoken in the energy sector. So we took interviews between late 22 to spring 23, and because obviously I'm only sharing energy sector related outputs, but overall project looked into both health and housing sector views as well. And the interviews really covered they covered different topics such as drivers for digitalization, understanding digital services, availability of data, as well as the governance and equity of access and provision. So these were the broad topics. Now I'm going to present some themes that emerge from the data. So first of all, we know that, and everybody is a clear. There is clear understanding, as you are aware, with the Energy Data Digitalization Task Force and Ofgem reports and DESNAs, etc. There is no doubt that digitalization is key for UK's transition to net zero in a cost-effective way. And indeed, when we spoke to sector experts, they identified different factors that may drive this focus on digitalization in terms of cost savings. It's about enabling reducing carbon emissions in a cost-effective way. It's also about developing new tools and services. So digitalization is the accepted fact. However, one thing that came up was, and also this is available in public reports, is minority ethnic communities are more likely to be in fuel poverty than the rest of the population. So this raises a question that if we are going forward, and indeed if digitalization can help us to manage the cost of energy provision in a cost-effective way, then to what degree minority communities are benefiting is not known. And the graph on this right-hand side shows the share of white population against smart meter adoption. And actually, so this is 2023 data. I was checking yesterday to see whether there are new statistics, just to see whether this picture has changed or not. And I've discovered that actually, since these quarterly statistics from DESNAS doesn't give a split by local authority level, so it looks as if this was the latest data that that's available at smart meter adoption at local level. So descriptively, this graph shows as if there is a relationship between share of white population, higher white population linked with smart meter adoption. Obviously, this is a descriptive relationship. So what we did next was, okay, can we really test that? Is there a statistically significant relationship, or to what degree? What can we learn from that? So what we did was, then we reached out to Ofgem and Citizens Advice. You might be aware that consumer perceptions of the energy market is a survey that is undertaken by Ofgem every year, and we were able to get hold of the February 2021 online survey. So this is an online boost survey in which, in addition to around 3,200 households that they go and speak to 300 individuals from minority different ethnic groups. So we were able to access this data, and actually this data has been analyzed and published in some other academic papers, as shown in this graph. But nonetheless, all the results that I saw until now, at least, is around broad representation, broad trends. Whereas what we did was access to individual survey data, raw data itself, and then analyze if we could infer anything from it. So this chart shows the survey data from this Ofgem ethnicity boost survey against GB population. So we can see that in terms of gender, it's closely matched. In terms of age, the demographic participants, there are younger sample and fewer older adults. In terms of regional location, it looks like the this survey is biased towards London compared to GB share, and then income we found close match. And in terms of different ethnic groups, looks like Indian and African groups are overrepresented. So so this is just a recap of what this data looks like. Beju, are you happy to tell us a bit more in terms of what we did next from this survey data?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nazmi. Yeah. So before turn to the regression results we did for the smart meter to predict the smart meter uptake. So we actually want to walk you through the key variables included in our model. So basically, this capture a broad range of demographic and social, economic, and geographic and behavioral factors that may influence the smart meter adoption. So we can, starting with the demographics. So gender is included as a binary variable, which is male and female, with male set as a reference group, and age is grouped as in six. You can see it's into 6 brands, all the way from 16 to 75 or older, was to 74. And here we just use the 16 to 24 as group as the baseline, representing the younger adults who are often early adopters of the technology. And ethnicity is captured through a detailed multi-category categorical variable, including groups such as I jumped to the it's included as Indian, Pakistan, or African, Caribbean, Chinese, or other backgrounds. And we also include 2 key measures of social economic position, which is the social economic group, represented as a SEG. It's based on the standard UK classification, which is we have 4 categories, which are A, B, C1, C2, and DE. And here we just use the AB as the represented, I think it's representing professional and managerial positions as the reference group. And income here is just grouped into 5 bands in the model. So we just aggregate these detailed income bands into 5 bands. And regions of residence or the geographic is included as a categorical variable with 11 standard UK regions, such as the Southwest, Northwest, or London. And one region which is used as a baseline, typically London, or the Northeast, and all other regions are interpreted as relative to it. And finally, we include a behavioral variable, which is the energy efficiency information, which indicates whether the respondents recalls receiving the energy advice or information in the past. So this is very important measure as consumer engagement. And then the satisfaction variable, is also examined in the model, but the result I will show you later. Yes, next. So the first thing we do is actually take a look at is from the chi-square test results. So basically, the chi-square test results allows you to test whether there is a statistically significant relationship between 2 categorical variables. as I presented just now. So, for example, what we did is that we test each smart meter uptake binary variable with all other like gender, ethnicity variables. So here you can see the smart meter uptake is actually statistically significant related to age, gender, social economic group, and also the energy efficiency information respondents. But it does not relate to all other variables like the geographic or ethnicity and income. And interestingly, the satisfaction is quite related to the gender, but not related to all other age or to all the way to income variables. So that may allow that that's actually pose an interesting question we may follow up later. Yeah, and the next like the main interest variable we take a look at is the ease of understanding. Basically, this question asks you how satisfied with the ease of understanding of the bill. And yes, we actually found something interesting about the relationship between the ease of understanding of the bill with the age, ethnicity, and income group. Yeah. And so, we basically do a logic model, which allows us to identify the factors associated with the smart meter adoption. So we, as I just said, we basically include all the explanatory variables like gender, age group, and socioeconomic classification, and all others. So the regression results here tells you the following things. So the gender, for first gender, the women are 10.5 percentage points less likely than men to having a smart meter. And this basically aligns with previous behavior research showing gender difference. And second, the age, compared to the 16 to 24 age group, the older groups, especially those aged 15 to 64, show a drop of over 40 percentage points in uptake probability. And
Wait, Joe, sorry, shall we also add that the asterisks show that it's the statistically significant relationship, right? So in terms of analysis, yeah, the asterisks are there good next to the
yes,
variables, whereas if there is no asterisk, that means there isn't a statistically significant relation for that variable.
yes, thanks, Tasmia. Yeah, that's very important info you should know beforehand. Yes. So third, one of the most powerful predictor is whether the respondent recalls receiving the energy efficiency information. So those who do are about 20 percentage points more likely to report having a smart meter. So this basically highlights the engagements or touch points in driving the uptake. And in terms of the social economic group, so the individuals in C1, which is represented as the junior managerial and roles, are about 11 points less likely than those in the AB groups, which is professional, to have a smart meter. So this basically may suggest even within the middle income households, like the position or autonomy may matter. And also the income is also important. So households earning like 60,000 pounds or more or higher than that are 20 percentage points more likely to have a smart meter compared to those earnings under 16,000 pounds. So these findings basically underscore this connection between the income and the technology adoption. And lastly, the ethnicity. So interestingly to see that belonging to a mixed ethnic background is associated with like 30 2 percentage point reduction in the probability of the uptake of smart meter. So maybe this kind of it raised some interesting question to the ethnicity about the smart meter uptake. So yeah, to summarize, I think the demographic and the structural factors really does matter, but engagements can significantly boost the adoption across all groups. And there is a strong value in like communication and addressing the social economic disparities to support energy transition for the smart meter uptake. Yes.
Thank you, Bejo. It's interesting that we don't find any statistical relationship with the in terms of regions, but anyway, I guess that's what the data tells us. Thanks, everyone. I mean, I don't know if there's any burning question, but otherwise, I will move on. So now we talked about smart meter, and because smart meter is essential in terms of accessing different tariffs in the future, right? The second point that emerged from our analysis was that the digital services will grow, and that this is some experts noted that we are at the beginning of a digital journey, and there were also parallels drawn with the banking sector in the sense that many of the digital services in banking sector are digital now. And in particular, both suppliers and network operators recognize the role of digitization and that how it can help with the develop different services. Having said that, I think going forward, this is really interesting question that if you have seen the House of Lords digital exclusion report that came out in 23, it was really interesting that when it mentioned 6% of households have no mobile or broadband internet at home. So this, so what does it mean in terms of digitally poor households, in terms of whether they can't access to these services because they don't have the tools, in other words, a smartphone or a tablet or whatever, or even if they have the tools, what if they don't have the broadband internet connection, etc. So I think the fact that digital services will grow, but how we could address that digital exclusion and whether we need a digital upskilling strategies, I think something that really needs to be where we need strong leadership from both regulator and then policymakers. The third point that I'd like to address is really around the inclusion. And indeed, many of the, both coming from, starting from 2005, both in response to regulatory drivers, but we are seeing that both suppliers as well as DNOs are engaging with the consumers, and then they want to develop engagement strategies and work with intermediaries such as National Energy Action or Citizens Advice Bureau. And having said that, what we note was that the suppliers or the network companies have different practices, and that, and in particular, there wasn't a distinction or understanding at the sector level in terms of what does a good practice look like versus from a not so good practice. So there is the fact that suppliers are going for cost driven by cost effectiveness, whereas DNO seem to be responding more to regulatory pressures. That still leaves a gap in terms of this fragmentation, and that each company or DNO versus supplier are they adopt different routes in terms of engaging with the consumers, but nonetheless, we have found cases where sometimes a household is contacted by both supplier as well as the network operator because they could be part of the house upgrade, for example. So this really shows that this lack of coordination between the sector almost creates the dilemma that, oh, we want to be the first to find the poor household or a household that needs upgrading, and then either as a supplier or a network operator can then take the credit for that. And linked to that, we also found that prior to services registry isn't really capturing all the complexity around different forms of vulnerability, whether it's due to economics, is it about ethnic because they can't speak the language, or is it cultural, or is it educational, or maybe there are some special needs that need to be taken into account. And linked to that, because the priority services registry includes the language as a criteria to be included in PSR. And yet, this, by the way, this data shows analysis we did by July 2023. So this table might be might be outdated, but nonetheless, at the time, what we found was that some companies are including language as an explicit criteria to go on PSR, whereas some of them don't even mention that. So that's why that good practice versus not so good practice in terms of engaging with vulnerable households is really key point that I would like to draw from this analysis. Now I will move to fourth point, which is that when we spoke to suppliers, obviously they don't collect ethnicity and they don't have any understanding in terms of who their customers are. Whereas when we spoke to network operators, they recognize, because obviously because they are geographically concentrated, they have a better understanding of who their customers are, or whether there are more ethnic groups concentrated in some part of the network than the rest. And having said that, both groups mentioned expressed concerns around data leaks, but they also noted that going forward, the fact that we don't know how different ethnic groups are engaging or what their consumption patterns are, or the fact that they are living in multi-generational houses, they could offer opportunities in terms of flexibility. But because we don't have data, we have no idea of knowing if they could support additional services that are more suited to their lifestyle. So that's why the point that ethnicity data falls through cracks because suppliers don't collect, but network operators can infer that, means that there could be opportunities, missed opportunities that could from engaging minority ethnic communities. And this means indeed looking at, I've done some work looking into solar PV adoption data, and we want to do more detailed analysis in due course. But yeah, to what degree minority ethnic communities are benefiting from feed-in tariffs, to what degree they're benefiting from, for example, electric vehicle subsidies that were available, etc. We just because we don't have data, we have no visibility of seeing that. Fifth point is really around recognizing that suppliers obviously want to increase their market share, and what they do is obviously because digitally affluent customers are good and that they are probably more likely to use digital services, so they are easy to serve. That's why the using Experian data or other publicly available data sets, they do marketing at postcode level because they understand what kind of consumer groups exist in different postcodes. And that's why the fact that some consumers could be expensive to serve, or that they could offer tariff, because legally they are obliged to offer a tariff in a postcode. And it could be that some tariffs are offered in different postcodes, but not available. And indeed, in our in Prime project, one of our interview findings was that one of the households called their supplier to inquire about a particular tariff, and they were told that that tariff isn't available in that particular postcode. So I think, are really suppliers making all tariffs available across all postcodes, or actually by targeting different postcodes in different tariffs in different postcodes, raise the concern around concerns around customer discrimination? And indeed, one could even argue that if we know that the minority ethnic households are more likely to be in the most deprived areas, does that mean that the consumer support programs should really be weighed toward these deprived areas rather than just having targets set at aligned with their customer base? So maybe weighing towards addressing or working with customers that are living in these deprived areas can make more significant contributions in terms of getting them out of fuel poverty. So now I would like to sum up the findings emerging from this analysis. So, and indeed, as I said before, the regulation and operational savings are key for driving the towards drive towards digital development of digital services and products. And yet, given that suppliers are almost competing with each other to increase their market share, and the fact that they are doing their best in terms of attract these affluent or first adopter customers, raise the risk around this, the market becoming a wild west, and that who then is going to serve these not so affluent customers. And the second point is that around this, as we saw in that table around the inclusion of language, a simple criteria that is included in Ofgem PSR registry, and the fact that some companies don't make it even explicitly clear on their website shows that do we need to have these best practice guidance or standards in terms of engaging with the consumers. And the third point is really around this lack of data, and to what degree, if we had more granular data, what kind of different customized services could be developed, and then could be real, because going forward, we want to create flexibility, we want to create tariffs and services on the market that's acceptable to lots of different customers. So are we missing some opportunities here? And the fact that obviously minority communities might have language barriers, there could be other socioeconomic problems and digital literacy. So that's why that raises the point about working with community organizations such as ZWISE and National Energy Action, and the fact that digitization is going to amplify going forward. How do we ensure that those organizations are able to provide these support services going forward? Another point I mentioned before, which is around the vulnerability and different types of vulnerability, and whether having a single definition of PSR is suitable to capture different types of vulnerabilities is another question. And in terms of designing digital services, I think rather than assuming an average consumer, if those services were to be designed for the most vulnerable, then obviously they will be able to cater for all kinds of customers. And another point is really recognizing that digital data governance is the gap. So ICO is known, but they mostly focus on privacy of data. However, there are other issues that needs to be unpacked in terms of accessibility of data and use. Now I would like to move to modeling part, and I realize I'm running out of time, but I'll make sure I'll wrap up in rather than 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So this is the part where we said, remember qualitative surveys and then online survey that we did with the minority communities, and the sample included around 900 individuals. So the graphs show their participation by different regions and by gender, as well as religion and the age group. So what you can, because the survey was carried out in different languages, such as Chinese or Hindu and Tamil and etc. So the survey was translated, and we put lots of effort into working with different communities. And so yeah, here we see the participation by different languages, and also the ethnic groups by different location. So once this data was collected, we then said, okay, how could we understand what drives online service satisfaction? So we use the survey data come in. So this is the survey data. And then once we did initial analysis to understand data characteristics, and then we feed that into develop a agent-based model. But while traditional agent-based models are developed either based on rules, simple rules, or by utility functions, here we used machine learning to define the agent behavior. So in other words, we didn't specify functions or things, but rather the raw data fed into machine learning model. And this is the work that Menon led, and he used ensemble learning and meta learning and AutoCARE's different tools that went into that. And then we used that to run different simulations. So I'll present some of the results from the model. So first of all, the graph on the left shows that if the individuals have past experience of online harm, it reduces the satisfaction quite sharply. So in other words, if the online harm experience, then it has a disproportionate impact on satisfaction. So that highlights ensuring that design and services are developed proof from the start rather than giving any bad experience to the users. The second graph I'm showing here, it shows the immigration status change. And obviously here, what we are seeing, maybe not surprising, obviously, as individuals, if they are coming here under different visa status, as they progress towards indefinite leave to remain or citizenship status, that their engagement and maybe understanding of the society increases, and that's why their online service satisfaction increases proportionately. There are two other graphs that I will share. One is around really the educational attainment. So what we are seeing here is that educational attainment of primary school in England has a more significant impact on satisfaction than it has more impact in England than in Scotland. So somehow what we are seeing is there's difference between England and Scotland. And then we are also noting similar type of difference in the accommodation type. So somehow in England, both having basic educational attainment and then even improving from shared housing to temporary accommodation increases satisfaction much higher level than that in Scotland. As I told you before, I'll cover two more. These are my two slides, which is around cross-sector perspectives. So because I thought, even though this is energy sector experts, I thought it will be interesting to find out about what are the cross-sector commonalities or differences. So first of all, in terms of drivers, energy sector digitalization is seen as central. It's a necessity. Whereas in health, it emerges as a form of communication. And in housing, it emerges as a tool to increase efficiency. In energy, we are seeing that stick approach is mostly used. There's a strong regulator oversight in terms of supplier license conditions or DNO price control periods and changes in that. So there's strong regulatory oversight, whereas in health, all the practices are geared towards this best practice guidance. Whereas in housing, maybe because local authorities play a role, there isn't any national strategy existing. And in terms of benefits, obviously in energy, there's clear understanding of clear benefits, and so is in housing. Whereas in health, the service providers recognize there are benefits, but then they were also, some of the GPs we have spoken to, they were quite reserved about, what does it mean for someone's role in reception, or does that mean that some jobs will be lost, etc. So I thought it was really interesting that how digitization is impacting jobs, people's jobs and future roles. There were some different results were emerging in health. And in energy, I mentioned this before, the issue around first mover advantage and selective offer of tariffs, which could be a risk of discrimination. Whereas in other sectors, what we are finding is that there are differences in the organization. But overall, the fact that public sector equality duty I think there are strong opportunities to learn across sectors. So for example, adoption of best practice guidance in energy in terms of how suppliers or network operators can engage with their customer base could be something to learn from this cross-sector perspective. And we have also identified further opportunities across the sectors. So for example, social housing associations could work with local authorities and suppliers and or DNOs to improve housing efficiency. So I'm linking the social policies with energy and housing justice, and where this specific focus is on the most deprived areas rather than just addressing overall level of poverty. I think there could be more significant benefits for addressing these most deprived areas than working with individuals who need that support. I'm not saying that it's one or the other, but rather saying that most deprived areas, there could be more structural problems there. So addressing there could offer benefits much more than working with other areas. Finally, I want to let you know that Prime has ended, but Menan is leading a small project which is funded by Ignite Network. So this is a network called Innovation and Growth Needs Inclusion and Engagement of All Talent in Energy. So this is a small project where he's interested to understand labor force diversity in the development of digital services. So he put together a small survey, and you are seeing the QR code here, and I will also share the web link in due course, but we will be really interested in hearing from you in terms of your experience of how the labor force is diverse, what issues you are facing in terms of diversity, equality, and inclusion, and how we could take it forward is something that we are keen to do. And with that, I will stop. Over to you, Rowan.
Thank you very much. Wow, that was a lot there. That was impressive. Yes. I've also seen that's quite a lot of questions in the chat. I did have a couple, but I'm wondering if I maybe they were quite specific. There was just so much in there, and I actually have heard Nazmi present on this before, so I've even had a heads up that there were some issues there around the PSR that I thought was quite interesting. I was really interested as well in how you worked with other ethnic groups and how with different community groups, and how actually working closely with them informed your work. So maybe we could start with that, if that's okay. So what would you say that you learned, or that the advantages were of actually engaging directly with those communities in order to understand some of the issues that you explored today?
Great question. With the caveat, I'll do my best to answer that, with the caveat that I wasn't involved that part of the work. Remember, this was quite a large program with 3.3 million funding. So I wasn't directly involved, but talking to colleagues across the team, they were saying that they identified quite a range of views and experiences in terms of some of them don't understand bills, and they get their younger children, for example, to help them to make an appointment with their GP because they don't speak the language, or they find it difficult to make online appointments, etc. So I think that family support and understanding these tools and services and apps, and the fact that some of them uses in terms of more specifically on energy related issues, some of them are on I forgot the name, the prepayment meters, and that they use post office, and they go and they want to limit their consumption because they are concerned about their bills. I think some of the issues resonate with broadly social poor households in terms of being prepayment, etc. But I think what we are finding was that the fact that they can understand, and then they utilize that younger generation, and it places additional expectations on young generation, and the fact that some of them live in multi-generational homes, I think really adds that complexity and raises maybe some opportunities, but also some further challenges that need further elaboration. So I would really encourage you, if you're interested in more, just go and look at publications that my colleagues have produced on understanding these individual views.
Yeah, so really sort of a deeper insight to understand what's actually going on and explaining some of the numbers through the kind of the actual going and speaking to people as well. I see that there's a related question in the chat there. Again, this might be a bit mean because I think this is not the work that you were specifically involved in, but it's how did you go about identifying and approaching individuals for interviews? Were these people participants that already had a strong interest or either positive or negative in digital services, or did you have to sort of go and find people who weren't really?
I think, yeah, I mean, good question. So from day one, we had those community organizations supporting us. So through them, we asked them to help us identify individuals. So one route was through them. Second route, we were a bit pragmatic that the team had researchers from different backgrounds. So we also used their network. And thirdly, we also went cold in terms of sometimes identifying community organizations and asking them, oh, we have this project, could you support us? So we really utilized a number of mechanisms, and obviously individuals were paid for their time as common with any social science research. But yeah, it was really those three routes in terms of the organizations that were part of the project, reaching out to other organizations that weren't part of what we thought that they could support and they would be interested, and thirdly, the researcher networks.
There was a quick question here. What's the definition of mixed ethnic? I think that might have been answered.
I think is that in relation to survey?
Yes, yeah, it was
okay.
in the survey and the modeling, yeah.
I think in the survey, we just used the ONS categories. So that comes from ONS categories that are available, yeah.
And I see that you've added in the chat any mixed multiple ethnic background was one of those categories, and that's just what people were asked.
Yeah.
So just looking for good questions. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, that's people going. Does the format or presentation of energy efficiency advice matter in terms of affecting uptake?
Good question. I think that comes from the Ethnicity Boost survey. So obviously we didn't implement the survey, but the question asked whether they were provided information 6 months prior to that time scale. So I think we don't know whether indeed there could be differences, but I don't think that was a detail that was captured in the survey, really, what form of advice was provided. I don't think it went into detail. Vaijo, is there anything else you recall from the survey?
No, yeah, you definitely completely answer that question. So I also put my answer in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
did they explain very much to you about sort of where those questions came from? I appreciate it wasn't your survey, but I mean, did they actually specifically send some people some specific advice, or was this just sort of trying to understand if people felt that they'd received some advice at some point?
I think it was the letter, Rowan.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, this is a really good question. Maybe I'll try to find out more. Vaijo, let's make a note and because we would like to get hold of the more recent survey data to see if our results hold, or are we getting different insights. So I think, yeah, we'll try to find out more if there's any further distinction or definition of that question.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting because it did seem to have quite a big impact as well,
It does, yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I've got another one here. Do you have any thoughts on how different ethnic groups have distinct or different energy consumption patterns resulting from different use of energy services? So things like cooking, hot water use, heating patterns.
I think great question again. I also wonder a lot about that, but I know that there's a big literature around how values and beliefs and etc. influences energy consumption. So no, I'm not aware of any granular data set in terms of tracking how those consumption patterns vary across different household routines and different energy services. But I think, yeah, that's one to look at. Having said that, in one of our interviews, I remember an expert was talking about that, for example, during Ramadan, we see that consumption patterns change because obviously people eat later in the evening and late at night, and we see higher energy consumption, for example. But yeah, I don't know how it will impact other ethnic groups and their energy use patterns.
I mean, I guess there's a trade-off here between sort of privacy, but a better data about who the people are that we're looking at the data patterns for could give us more insight into that. But yes, there's always data privacy issues around getting sort of deeper understanding, isn't there?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
We've got another one here. Why do suppliers offer unfavorable tariffs in underserved areas? Is it not in their best interest to offer the most competitive prices possible to maximize customers?
I think what I said, rather than unfavorable, it's the tariff that they're obliged to offer a tariff. And obviously, any supplier, I mean, I haven't looked at more recent, but I know that they offer like 4, 5, 6 different, so suppliers will have different products, right? And
Yeah.
actually, if you spoke to suppliers, they will say, oh, it's like, I don't know, cereal market that we offer different products and different
Yeah.
price regimes, etc. So I think our finding is that we have one anecdotal evidence where an individual reported querying about a particular tariff and being told that that tariff isn't available in their postcode. And we also have the evidence that at least a tariff is offered, but I don't have the full visibility of what kind of tariffs are offering and what marketing strategies suppliers are doing. Obviously, that is their commercial business. Yes, I will think that they know what their customer base and they do their calculation based on that. But having said that, I think this cuts really across commercial profit making versus social goal of ensuring each household is protected. And I think that could be quite there may not, those objectives may not always be aligned with each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting sort of tensions there as well. So, you know, potentially energy suppliers could actually tailor services to really well to different consumer groups, and this could actually be advantageous to those consumer groups. So there's a sort of a positive potential there as well as the possible negative there. But then there's always that tension of, you know, actually energy suppliers want to get the most money out of their customers as well. So.
I know, yeah. Would you prefer having a wealthy household who uses lots of energy versus maybe someone less well off but more careful about their consumption? Yeah, I think there you're absolutely right. I fully agree that yeah, there are interesting trade-offs there. But I think the fact that sometimes one expert used difficult to serve, which is really difficult to serve in terms of because they make lots of calls to their helpline, or is it difficult to serve because they ask different language services or etc. Is what that difficult to serve unpack, I think really needs further work.
Yeah. Well, that's us bang on 1 o'clock. I know that you have to rush to the airport now, so I will wrap it up there. Thank you very much. It was a fascinating talk, so much in there. So I am going to go back to the website and have a look at all of the latest outputs.
Thank you so much, Ron. I really have the appreciate the opportunity. I think the Prime Community Zone website is up and running. Lots of data is available, and thank you so much, Ron and Stephen, for giving me the opportunity to share our findings here. It was great, to be able to share and hear your very interesting questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you very much.